Well, good Tuesday evening to you. The polls officially closed 2 minutes ago here in South Carolina on this primary day. Voters cast their ballots, and now we wait to see how everything plays out over the next couple of hours as those ballots are counted.
You're right about that, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us for this special digital primary night special. Now, every seat in the State House in Columbia is in play, as well as congressional races and some local level races like sheriff and county councils, just to name a few.
A lot to break down. We won't be able to get to everything.
You're right,
That's
right.
for sure. But some of the key state races we want to take a look at it, and we've invited in two of the best to do it. We have South Carolina Republican Party Chair Drew McKissick joining us, and also the great Jim Felder from the South Carolina Voter Education Project.
Yeah.
I know going into a primary like this, the number one concern is exactly what we opened with, the voters. And from what you're seeing, how does turnout look? I know early voting was about 120,000 or so during that period. How do we feel now?
Well, from a turnout standpoint, early voting is up about 20,000 more than it was back in 22, which is interesting because we don't have statewide primaries right now. So we've got a lot of competitive races in the upstate that are juicing turnout, obviously. The 3rd and the 4th district, particularly some state house and state senate races. The low country and the rest of the places around the state is a little flat or it's a little bit off. But at the end of the day, you can't have an election without voters. We've got good participation. Republicans are up about 2 to 1 over Democrats in terms of total turnout. So we're happy with that.
So what do you think, Drew, is the reason why, for instance, that we see this increase? Because at one point there was talk about voter fatigue, and now we're seeing that looks like that's not the point anymore. What do you think people are going out and voting?
Well, I think you've got two things. One, a lot of competitive races, again, that are spurring a lot of turnout right now. And then you've also got, I think, and this is where we'll figure things out after tonight when we see what the total turnout was like.
Right.
But what percentage of people are getting more comfortable with early voting versus voting on primary day? So some of that extra turnout we've seen might be what we would ordinarily think of as primary day voters who are just voting early now and getting used to it.
Dr. Felder, I mean, it has been your life's work to educate the people about the ballot box. Know who's on your ballot before you get there, and know about the benefits of getting there early. There's got to be some level of disappointment if you feel we're not doing a good job today in terms of people coming out.
We're not doing a good job. I'm stressing early voting, something we had not pushed before because we didn't really have it. But the other thing is sample ballot. People just don't know who all the candidates are. So we're urging folk to pull your sample ballot off the website. You don't know who these candidates are. So you get the sample ballot, you know who you can vote for, not the neighbor across the street, which may be in a different precinct. A lot of people don't go out because they don't know who the candidates are, and they don't want to mess up their vote at the polling place. So that has been a problem that we have been trying to address in recent months. Early voting as well as get your sample ballot. In the upstate, you got a lot of Republicans running up there.
A lot of competitive races.
A
lot of money being spent.
A lot of money being spent. But that is an issue. They start blowing my phone up. Who are these candidates? I don't know who they are. Yeah. So we're trying to stress sample ballot. Right. It's simple to do, 3 or 4 clicks, and you've got your ballot with all the candidates that you can vote for.
Yeah, we live it every single day. You live it every day. You do. We do, covering this every day. And we can't assume that everybody else does that's out there. Some, of course, there are some that do, that are really plugged in. We do want to take a look at some of those key races that we're tracking, particularly the ones at the State House. A lot of stuff up for grabs. Now, we're going to start with our Claire Foley.
Yeah, man, she's covering the Senate District 26 race for Senator Dick Harpootlian's seat there. Claire, the seat is being fought for by candidates on both sides of the aisle. Polls are closed at 7. What can you tell us?
That's right, Brian and Friendy. There are 5 candidates total in this race, including incumbent Senator Dick Harpootlian himself. There are 2 Democrats and 3 Republicans. So let's take another look at the names that were on the ballots today. On the Democratic ticket, it's current House Representative Russell Ott going against Senator Harpootlian. On the Republican side, it's Jason Gary, Chris Smith, and Billy Oswald. During our 5 p.m. show, we told you about Representative Ott and Republican hopeful Jason Gary, so let's take a look at the other candidates in this race. On the Republican ticket, Billy Oswald is a local attorney who has run for public office in the past but is yet to be elected. We reached out to his campaign for an interview but didn't hear back. But he has shared publicly that issues he's passionate about include government spending, ethics laws, transparency in office, term limits, and judicial reform. Also running for the GOP nomination is Chris Smith. He's also run previously back in 2020, but he says he thinks he has a good shot at earning the nomination this time around.
There are 3 things that I look at every time I'm looking at a bill. Does it fix the problem? Is it constitutional? And does it make sense? And unfortunately, I see some of these things coming across that just do not. And so our biggest problem in the State House right now is that we just don't have the votes in the Senate to get good legislation passed. And I aim to fix that.
And all of these candidates are vying for the seat that's currently occupied by Senator Harpootlian. He joins me live now. He's also in this race. Senator, now the polls are closed, just give us your thoughts on how this election was for you.
It was, a long process. We met a lot of voters. We communicated with a lot of voters. We feel really good about our chances tonight. But until the people have spoken, we don't know. So we're looking forward to getting results in the next 45 minutes to an hour and determining who won the race. I want to commend Russell Ott on a great campaign, no matter who wins this. I thought it was a very sophisticated, aggressive campaign on both sides. And I'm hoping that once this is over, we can work together.
5 candidates in total from both sides of the aisle, including yourself. What does it tell you that so many candidates want to represent District 26?
Well, I think there's a lot of big decisions made in the South Carolina Senate. I've been involved in some very controversial issues up there, like the Panthers, which I voted against and fought against, and very, very controversial earmarks in which I felt legislators were wasting money. Those are big issues. Education's a big issue. The environment's a big issue. And many people want to get involved in dealing with these big issues.
And it doesn't end here. Why is it important that people go out now in November and vote again?
So that they get the person that represents best their interests. And I believe that I'm that person.
Easy enough. Thank you so much, Senator. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And live tonight in Columbia, I'm Claire Foley. Watch Fox News, Local First.
And there you have it. We
Simply
all
put.
know Senator Dick Harpootlian doesn't waste any time. He says it like
I was
it
going
is.
to say, he's usually not that succinct, though.
Right.
I mean, he got right to the point there.
Yeah.
You got a lot more to say.
Exactly.
He said because you got to vote.
And there it is. And of course, as we know, Republicans in the state are working to grow their influence even larger at the State House after today's primary. And that's playing out in the race for Senate District 35.
Yeah, Kiana Jordan has been tracking that. She's live at Catawba Trail Elementary voting precinct there, where they just closed up for the day. You talked to a number of candidates, talked to voters today as well. This is a significant race. Why do they feel so?
Well, guys, what we're seeing here in today's election is the Republican Party trying to gain more influence at the State House. And they're doing that by trying to flip certain Democratic seats that are up for re-election. And that's what we're seeing play out here today in the race for Senate District 35, where you have 4 Republicans and 3 Democrats vying for each party's nomination. Now, Senate District 35 is made up of portions of Lee, Kershaw, Richland, and Sumter counties, and currently belongs to Democratic Senator Thomas McElveen, who announced he would not be seeking re-election for the seat. Right now, 3 Democrats, Austin Floyd, Lucy Mahone, and Jeffrey Graham, are battling it out for the Democratic nomination. On the other side, there are 4 Republican candidates: Lindsay Agostini, Christina Allard, Jerry Chivers, and Mike Jones. There has been a steady flow of people coming to vote for the last several hours here, and voters today saying there are key issues driving them to the polls.
I would like to see equity among the districts, equity among the counties.
Making sure that our country is safe and protected. I am grateful for those who have served in the armed forces, and I appreciate the right to bear arms and to protect myself and my country.
Now, we also spoke to a number of the candidates today, but we weren't able to speak to all of the candidates. However, now that the polls are closed, many of those candidates saying that they appreciate everyone that came out to make their voice heard and vote. Live in Columbia, I'm Kiana Jordan. Watch Fox News, Local First.
Of course, we're going to see Kiana at 10 tonight, too. Those two races right there, gentlemen, held by Democrats right now, those seats. But this goes back to something I talked to you about a couple weeks ago, about you have the majority of the State House, but looking to build. And Kiana even touched upon it there.
Sure.
There's going to be some change somewhere. New faces, at least.
Yeah, right.
Maybe not necessarily the party, but those are some of those opportunity moments for your party.
Right. Well, our job is to win races. I mean, that's what the party exists for. And the party exists to go win campaigns so that we can impact policy. And we go where our opportunities are. And in this particular cycle, you've got 35 as an open seat. You've got the seat over here with Senator Harpootlian, which was recently combined because another seat was moved down to Charleston. We've got several House seat opportunities right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see so many candidates running for those seats is because it's an opportunity, because they understand that it's potentially viable. We've got 4 Republicans running for the 35 seat. We've got 3 for the other seat. So people sense an opportunity.
The big issue in the Sumter race is that local people wanted to keep that seat as a resident seat, Senate seat. So Jeffrey comes out of Camden and running with the ball. But that has been a big issue that has divided the Sumter Democrats in terms of keeping McElveen's seat local.
That's a very important thing, because even talking about locals, really quick, going back to District 26, there's been a lot. We know Dick Harpootlian is going up against Russell Ott, the two Democrats. But some people are looking at Russell Ott and saying he might be kind of conservative Democrat. It's for some individuals. So, Drew, to that point, let's say if he were to get the nomination, he wins in November. Could he be someone that the Republicans could work with because of his stances?
Yeah, of course, everything in politics sometimes seems like a sliding scale in terms of who is more conservative or liberal. I think, if you stack the two of them up, you would probably agree that Russell Ott is more conservative on a good number of issues than Senator Harpootlian. I think if you just look at their track record in terms of Representative Ott's track record of working with some maybe more conservative members on the House side, I would expect to see that translated over into the Senate if he were to win.
Gotcha. With all the candidates, though, got to be encouraging to see so many people want to be part of this process. Sure. It has to be.
Well, you can't complain if you don't vote for one.
Correct.
Correct.
Particularly if no matter how many candidates there are.
If you run for office, you usually complain about the voters. That's usually the way it works out.
But the one positive thing I'm hearing out there is that they love to see a lot of candidates out there to get different voices heard. And also it draws out the electorate as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, we got another one of those races that people are watching closely, too, that will have a new face in it. We're talking about the race for Senator Mia McLeod's seat. She chose, again, not to run after shifting independent and not running for that office one more time.
So our Mashari Adams has been following that race today. Masharia, what can you tell us about the candidates?
I am here at Rehoboth Baptist Church, where we are gearing up for the watch party for State Representative Ivory Thigpen. Now, some people have already started to make their way to the watch party, and I'm actually here with one of his members of his church. And Mr. Burrell, just talk to me a little bit about why you decided to vote for State Representative Thigpen, and how has he shown you that he's a good leader?
Well, I decided to vote for Representative Thigpen because he is a good leader. He's a very influential pillar in the community. People gravitate around him because of the kind of person he is, and they feel that genuality about him when they get around him, because he just does what he says, and it's always, comes to fruition. Pastor Thigpen believes in liberty and justice for all, and that's one thing that we need to have all over the world, because he's stood on tough issues like the hate crime bill, and he's, is a strong advocate for that bill, and that's one bill that I believe that we need to push across the Senate floor and make that possible in the state of South Carolina. So overall, he's just a good, genuine human being, a God-fearing man, of course, but he's our pastor, and we love him, and he's a family man. So if you want to support the pastor, he's the one to support Representative Thigpen for House District Senate 22. Come down and join us. Thank you.
All right, and they say that Thigpen is set to arrive here at the watch party around 8:30. Coming up tonight at 10, we'll have more on the election results. Back to you.
Right, Ms. Shar, thank you for that. And to that, right over there, of course, Senator Mia McLeod, who is not running for re-election again, one of the sister senators. And we know that one of the Democrats who are vying, Monica Elkins, she is with the school board. Everyone has an experience here, but do you believe that voters might sway towards Elkins because she's a female to keep the sister senator brand going on?
That is a part of it, but the other thing is I see a runoff in this race. The three strong candidates, but she has an edge in terms of being a female and to replace Mia, and that's what the sisters are looking for. So I'm convinced we're going to have a runoff from that seat.
Wow. And again, we're going to be back to this again.
We are. And we talked about a little bit about that in the open. We're not done today, really.
No.
We aren't. Because a lot of these races, we're going to see it again in a couple of weeks when you whittle it down to 2 people.
Yeah.
That is something that is weighing on people. There have been a lot of elections since the beginning of this year. There's been some local special elections. There's been the Democratic primary for president, Republican primary for president. It's all, of course, leading to November, but voter fatigue, we hear it all the time.
Well, self-government is work. I mean, it's just the bottom line. We want self-government. You have to work for it. And part of the problem, and I know he was talking earlier about, in many cases, folks not even knowing sometimes what races are on the ballot. And we all live and swim in national media all day long. Most of us probably know more about what's going on in D.C. than we do our own backyard. And that's part of the problem. One of the things that we need to address is more of a focus on local issues and local candidates because they spend a lot of our tax dollars too. So we need to encourage people to pay more attention.
Yeah. It's always the major driver, the national headlines. Each and every time we know that it gets everyone's attention. But to his point, local politics is where it's at, Mr.
What
Felder.
did Tip O'Neill say?
All politics is local.
That's correct. All politics is local.
Right.
And we're seeing that because we have all these different candidates that are jumping into the races. For instance, this race right here to take over Senator Mia McLeod's seat, you have a former school board member, and you also have a pastor, and then you have a current council person. How do you think voters look at that when they look and they see all these different individuals who right here?
I mean, it's a good cross-section of candidates. I mean, in terms of occupation, background, demographics, I mean, you name it, come from all walks of life and so forth. And, I think, what Senator Harpootlian made the point. I mean, state government does a lot of stuff, and people care about the stuff that government does, and that drives the attention.
But in this race, you really have choices.
You do.
You do have the choices there. So.
Absolutely.
A lot of them. A lot of them. So, speaking of local level, we're going hyper-local here to Lexington County. One race in particular that we are following, that is the race for sheriff there. The current sheriff facing some competition from 2 challengers, both also former law enforcement.
Our Joey Matei has been following this all day. He joins us live outside of Sheriff Jay Coon's primary night headquarters. Joey, what can you tell us?
Yeah, guys, polls closed a little over 20 minutes ago, and I'm here at private property where in a little over an hour, Sheriff Coon and his supporters are going to be here at private property during his watch party. Now, Sheriff Coon got his start in law enforcement back in 1993 and has been with the Lexington County Sheriff's Department sheriff for the past 9 years. Now, one of his challengers is Billy Warren, who is a retired state highway patrol officer. He's planning to come out of retirement if he is elected, and same goes for Alan Driggers. Now, Driggers actually worked for Sheriff Coon until he retired in 2020. Now, the sheriff's office has been facing a staffing shortage, and all 3 candidates say that they plan to solve that issue. Now, Sheriff Coon has endorsements from some high-profile names as well. Both Governor Henry McMaster and Attorney General Alan Wilson have thrown their support behind the sheriff. Now, Billy Warren has been endorsed by the Lexington County Republican Party. I spoke with a voter earlier today who is voting for Sheriff Coon, and he says that commitment plays a huge part as to why he is getting his vote.
He's cared about the community long before he ever went to work in law enforcement, and what he's done is, you can imagine doing that job. You're on call 24/7, 365. It's a heck of a commitment, and he's never shied away from it.
And we'll continue to bring you updated coverage of this election and other state elections as well. Live in Lexington, I'm Joey Matei. Watch Fox News, local first.
Yeah, that voter said a mouthful right there. Whether it's sheriff or whatever your elected office is, you are on call 24/7, 365.
Drew, what happened over there? Why did Sheriff Coon attract all this opposition?
Well, sometimes personalities I know come into play, and sometimes it's issues. It's a little bit of all the above. Sometimes depends on what county you're standing in when you ask that question, I guess. But but this is one of those races that drives a lot of turnout. I mean, one of the things as a state party chairman I always have looked for in the past is, where can we go to try to win a sheriff's race? Because if we win the sheriff's race, it increases the chances we can win the rest of the courthouse, because people vote law enforcement. That drives a lot of attention.
It does.
And speaking of driving a lot of attention, what does it say to the fact that the governor endorsed him?
Put his stamp of approval.
Exactly. That's major for some people would say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, of course, the governor's been a big supporter of law enforcement, for a long time. And he's been, former U.S. attorney and, of course, attorney general in the past and so forth. So not surprising to see him get involved in that.
When all the votes are counted, of course, we're going to shift to first the runoff. but for the most
part,
you
got 2 weeks.
We got 2 weeks of that. But then we shift to November.
Yeah.
We start thinking about people's mindsets are going to start changing. Even though these local and state level races are still going to be on the ballot, the mindset changes. And that's where we start talking about the flood of voters coming in.
Sure.
South Carolina not considered a battleground state in that. We know which way it's going to swing. But what are some of those issues outside of what we're dealing with here in our state you think are going to drive people months from now?
Well, in my opinion, it goes back to what I mentioned a minute ago. We have an increasing level of what I would call the nationalization of politics and just the issues that people spend so much time thinking about. So, I mean, the border is almost as much of an issue here as it is, say, in Texas, other than the fact that, it's in their backyard every day. But still, we get so much of the media attention around that. The economy, obviously, inflation, obviously. Those things are national issues driving a lot of interest and enthusiasm, you would say, excitement, people being ready for November here. And that's going to carry, and then, of course, the presidential race at the top of the ticket. So all that's going to drive turnout across the state.
Mm-hmm. And the perception of, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, perception of the justice system too. At the time we had a verdict against President Trump. Today we get another verdict against the son of the sitting president, Joe Biden, referring to Hunter Biden.
So it looks like maybe the justice system is balancing itself between those two convictions. It's finally balancing things out. Sorry to see what happened with Biden today, but at least the system still works. And that's been a concern of a lot of folk, who's rigging the system here, or who's rigging it here. The other thing is about local issues. We're talking about broadband and health care in South Carolina. South Carolina's really grown in recent years, attracting all kind of industry and that kind of thing. So we got to keep up with what people need, and they are looking up at pocketbook issues.
Infrastructure is huge.
In November.
Power, utilities are going to be huge in the future. A lot of new people moving to South Carolina, no doubt about it, and they need power when they turn the lights on. They need roads to drive on. I mean, it's as he said, all politics is local, and that's local issues, and that affects a lot of what's going to drive people to the polls. Sure.
One more race too that we were going to touch on, the Low Country. U.S. House District 1, Nancy Mace, the sitting congresswoman, who did not get the backing of President Trump last time around. This time is getting a run from a familiar name, Catherine Templeton, the former head of DHEC, and also there are some Democrats in that race too. Another one of these races that is attracting a lot of people. And even though that doesn't technically represent our region here, people are watching it.
Well, it's attracted a lot of national attention, no doubt about that. It's attracted a lot of money nationally. Both sides. And I mean, it's you almost need a scorecard to keep up with who's with who between 2 years ago and today. But I think there's a very good chance that goes to a runoff. You were talking about runoffs. And
maybe on both sides.
That is a three-way race. It's not a two-way race. And everything that I've heard from people who are very involved there leads me to believe we're probably looking at a runoff.
And speaking of
more money.
Right. Good time to own a TV station in Charleston.
Yes, it is. Right. A lot of airtime.
Oh, wow. And with that being said, fellows, there is a lot at stake. We're looking at November elections, and a lot of people, for some individuals, they're still like there are only two, obviously, individuals to vote for. Either it's former President Donald Trump or current President Joe Biden. What do people need to know as they head on up forward? Because some people may feel as if, they don't like either candidate. What do you all say to that?
Take it away.
Apparently they have a lot to say.
Take it away.
Well, of course, Biden is is my candidate. Okay,
Right,
to
right.
begin with. And he's done a lot in the short period of time he's had in 4 years of being the president. However, you still got forces out there, the MAGA crowd, who is really pushing and getting a lot of coverage. You can't turn the TV on at any time, and they're out there. So it's going to be a close race. I must say, it's going to be a close race this time around. In spite of all that Biden has done, and in spite of all that happened to Trump. But
well, we're going to do our job to make sure it's not a close race here in South Carolina. I promise you that. But you do have those other candidates on the ballot, and you know, so it depends on which particular issues are motivating people, or are they just looking for a third option? But at the end of the day, we Americans tend to be dualist, A/B proposition, and that's been the way for a couple of 100 years now. I mean, despite the fact that we've had third parties rise up, merge together, fall apart, we end up being dualist. And at the end of the day, you're either going to pick somebody you like, or you're going to probably help elect somebody you don't like by staying home or voting for a third party candidate. I think people get that.
This is June. Early June.
It's a long
way to go.
It's a long way to go. And of course, normally we don't get excited about politics till September, but we've had so much of it this year.
There's been a lot going on, to say the least.
So let's vacation.
We'll all have
this out of the way.
We'll all have a hangover in November after it's over with, a political hangover.
That's right. The bottom line is vote. No matter what your political stripes are, get out there, vote. You can't do it right now because polls are closed unless you were in line before the door closed at 7. But again, we will be doing this again in some races in 2 weeks from now, and of course in November, and who knows, there could be also some, depending where you live, there could be some special elections too, here or there, but nothing like this where everything was in play, no matter what your district. Again, gentlemen, Drew McKissick, thank you again for coming on. Dr. Jim Felder, always a pleasure to have you as well, the wealth of history you always bring to our discussions, both of you gentlemen. And we're going to do this again at 10 o'clock, but we're going to have results then.
Right, exactly.
They should be coming in within the next 30 minutes, I would think.
And so it should be interesting to see what happens, Brian, especially in these particular races. What's going to happen? Will we know when we go to sleep, or will it be like there's going to be a runoff, then there's something else we got to think about?
We're going to know it all by, hopefully some things will be decided tonight, but some others may not be till the wee hours of the morning. But thanks again for joining us for this digital special looking at the South Carolina statewide primary today. And again, we will see you on the news at 10.